I am 70 years old, and I used to believe that if you lived long enough, you would eventually understand everything. I believed time softened truths, that love, especially family love, was something solid and unbreakable. I was wrong. Some betrayals arrive loudly, with shouting and slammed doors. Others come quietly, dressed as kindness, spoken in familiar voices. The latter are the ones that linger. The kind that settle into your bones and refuse to leave. My name is Allison Miller, and this is the story of how my own son looked me in the eye and lied to me, and how that lie unraveled an entire life I thought I understood. I have lived in Charleston, South Carolina, for nearly my entire life. The city has a way of wrapping itself around you, the smell of salt in the air, the slow-moving river, the pastel houses standing proudly despite centuries of storms. People here smile easily. They say good morning even when they don't mean it. I used to think that warmth meant something. For 35 years, I worked as a librarian at the Central Bank's research library downtown. It was a quiet place, tucked behind marble walls and polished floors, where few people wandered unless they needed something very specific. I loved it there. I loved the feel of old books in my hands, the smell of paper and ink, the way stories waited patiently to be discovered. Between those shelves, I built my life. I raised my only son Julian, mostly on my own while balancing long days at work. I shared 40 years of marriage with my husband, Leonard Miller, a good man, a gentleman, the kind who fixed broken chairs instead of throwing them out. Leonard died 8 years ago from a heart attack in his sleep. There was no warning, no goodbye. I woke up to a silence so deep it felt like the world had ended. Since then, I have lived alone in the same small apartment near the Ashley River where Leonard and I once planned our retirement trips and argued over paint colors. The walls are still lined with photographs: Julian at 5, holding a fishing rod too big for his hands; Julian at 18, stiff in his graduation gown; Leonard smiling beside me on our 30th anniversary. Julian married Patricia 15 years ago. They live in Mount Pleasant now, in a house with white columns and a driveway longer than my entire apartment. Julian is a branch manager at a large bank. He is always busy, always in meetings, always promising to call. He visits me once a month. Sometimes less. Patricia comes even less often. When she does, she looks around my apartment as though it smells faintly of dust and disappointment. Her mother, Edith, owns a chain of beauty stores across the state and has never hidden her opinion of me. To her, I am an outdated woman with outdated habits and an inconvenient place in her daughter's life. Still, I believed we were a family. The day everything began was May 12th, my 70th birthday. I woke early, as I always do. Age may take many things, but it doesn't take routine. I straightened the bed with the cotton sheets my dear friend Margaret gave me years ago, brewed a strong cup of black coffee, and stepped out onto the porch. The Ashley River curved lazily in the morning light. The water shimmered, indifferent to human worries. I remember thinking that 70 didn't feel as heavy as I'd expected. Julian had called the night before. "I'll come by tomorrow, Mom," he said. "We'll have lunch. I have a surprise for you." A surprise? I smiled at the thought, the way mothers do even when they know better than to expect too much. By noon, Julian arrived alone.
No Patricia. No cake. No balloons.
He hugged me quickly, the way someone hugs when they are already thinking about leaving. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said, smiling too wide. I noticed then that he wouldn't meet my eyes for long. We ate lunch at a small restaurant by the river. He talked about work, about interest rates and corporate restructuring. I listened, nodding, stirring my soup until it went cold. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "I need to talk to you about something important," he said. That was when the unease began. He explained that the bank was offering a new investment opportunity. A safe one, he assured me. Designed for retirees. Guaranteed returns. He said it was a way for me to finally relax, to stop worrying about money, to enjoy what time I had left. I told him I was comfortable. My pension, my savings, Leonard's life insurance, it was enough that he sighed, frustrated. "Mom, this is smart. You trust me, don't you?" I looked at my son. The child I taught to read. The teenager I waited up for every night. The man I had defended even when others criticized him. "Yes," I said. "Of course I trust you." He smiled then. A relieved smile. I signed the papers. What Julian didn't tell me was that those papers gave him power of attorney. What he didn't tell me was that the investment didn't exist. Over the next 6 months, small things began to change. My bank statements looked different. Withdrawals I didn't remember making. Transfers I couldn't explain. When I asked Julian, he reassured me. It's just part of the process. Trust me, Mom. And I did. Until the day my electricity was nearly shut off. I stood at the counter, bill in hand, shaking. There had to be a mistake. I had never missed a payment in my life. The clerk looked at me with pity. Your account is nearly empty, Mrs. Miller. Empty. I called Julian immediately. He didn't answer. That night, I sat alone in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, wondering how 70 years of careful living could disappear so quietly. The truth came out in fragments. A former colleague from the bank library mentioned Julian had been under investigation. A letter arrived from a lawyer. A stranger knocked on my door asking about property liens. Julian had used my money to cover his debts. Bad investments. Gambling losses. A lifestyle he couldn't afford. And Patricia knew. When I confronted him, he cried. He knelt in front of me like a child, promising to fix everything. I was going to pay it back, he said. I swear. But promises don't refill bank accounts. The reckoning didn't come from courts or police. It came quietly, like truth always does. I revoked the power of attorney. I sold the apartment. I moved into a small coastal town an hour away, where no one knew my name or my history. Julian stopped calling. On my 71st birthday, I sat by the ocean and realized something profound. Family is not defined by blood, but by honesty. I survived. And for the first time in my life, I was truly free. The ocean has a way of teaching patience. Each wave arrives, does its work, and leaves. I learned to live the same way. I found a part-time job at a local bookstore. I made friends who knew me not as someone's mother, but simply as Allison. Julian sent a letter once.
No επάλεγη.
Just explanations. I did not reply. 70 years taught me many things. But the most important lesson came at the end. Love without truth is not love at all. And sometimes, losing everything is how you finally find yourself.